We're talking about how do I know what insurance I need. No one really knows. You're just like hoping your broker's a nice person.
There were 8 people that would have died if they didn't think about what they're doing. It literally has life or death consequences sometimes. The average lawsuit costs $180,000.
Oh my God.
And that's just, defense alone costs you $100,000. I am what's called a P&C licensed producer, and we'll talk all about what these terms mean, but essentially that means that I am licensed in all 50 states in the country to sell and provide property and casualty insurance.
Which is that I as a business owner might not understand the regulations either. So how do I really know if this agent broker guy, Cal, knows what they're talking about?
There are times when you go, oh, that's a tiny mistake. It'll cost $500. I'm just going to pay for it as the business owner, and I'm going to take care of it myself out of my own pocket, right? It's a business expense. I'm just going to pay for this thing. But if it's $5 million that customer's wanting, well, oh, now I have to tell my insurance agents about it. I'm going to figure all that stuff out.
Okay, so I just got off the phone with Jeff. He was going to originally be on for about half an hour. We ended up talking for about an hour and 15 minutes. He broke down not just how do I know what insurance I need, but like almost everything you could think of about insurance. So the episode is quite long. It's like an insurance masterclass. So what I would do if you want to maximize or optimize your time is look at the show notes. We're going to put a lot of detailed notes in there. We're going to timestamp them. And so if you have a specific question, please feel free to jump around the show notes. But it is a very in-depth conversation about how do I know what insurance I need. He tells you how to select agents. He tells you how to know which ones are good. He tells you how to know what type of insurance that you need, all that stuff. So if your time is short, skip through the show notes. Otherwise, buckle up. Like if you want to know everything you want to know about insurance, it's in that episode. Hey everybody, today on How Do I, we're joined by Jeff Brewer, CEO of Cornerstone Insurance, a U.S. Coast Guard veteran and a former GE leader. Jeff helps businesses in finance and fintech navigate insurance in highly regulated environments. Today he's going to answer the question, how do I know what insurance I need? Can you tell me just a bit about your experience in insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am what's called a P&C licensed producer, and we'll talk all about what these terms mean. But essentially that means that I am licensed in all 50 states in the country to sell and provide property and casualty insurance. I've been doing that for a bunch of years now, and my background, thanks for mentioning the Coast Guard, that's where I started. That was my undergrad, and so focusing on compliance was a big part of my life for many years, and now I'm focused on kind of insurance, licensing bonds, and a variety of different things in a business called Cornerstone.
Amazing. So it sounds not easy to get registered in all 50 states?
It takes a lot of time and money. Yeah. So you have to take a test. You have to get the state. So every state has a regulatory body that's responsible for insurance in that state. Mm-hmm. And so you have to get approved by that. You have to take a big test. You have to do all sorts of things. And then you have to get, some states have reciprocal agreements or other types of things that you have to go about doing those things to get that license in that state. And then there's even some locations where the city, like New York City or Chicago, actually require an additional licensing effort. So yeah, quite a bit of work, but it's good to go. And we've got, many clients that appreciate it. So.
Well, I'm glad you're here because insurance is difficult. What I said before, you're just hoping your broker's a nice person. So Jeff, how do I know what insurance I need?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I love to do is I'd love to kind of start at the most basic part about what insurance is. And I made some slides up to share it, but I like to start with a story. So you mentioned the Coast Guard. So I've got a compass here, and you can see. So it's a pretty old one. I got this out of a ship that my ship was the Coast Guard Vigilant. We were off the coast of Miami, and this family had installed a new speaker system on the other side, right near where the compass was. And as you know, speakers have big, strong magnets in them. And so they affected how the compass showed which direction. So they went offshore and got far enough away they couldn't see the land, and they just said, I'll just follow the compass back. But what they didn't know is that the compass was being impacted by the new speaker they had installed before they went underway. And so our ship actually found them 30 miles off the coast of Miami in this tiny little boat that should have never even been in the ocean.
Oh, man.
And there were 8 people that would have died if they didn't think about what they're doing. And so I share this with a lot of my clients to help them know that this little thing here is a good reminder that even when you have no idea what type of unintended consequences of some of the actions you take, like putting in a new speaker system, it literally has life or death consequences sometimes. And so insurance is a method or a tool that we use to pool the risk. It doesn't eliminate the risk, but it pools and reduces and mitigate some of those losses. So if you don't mind, I could share some of the slides and we'll talk through some.
I would love that, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, let's see if I can. All right, awesome. So how do I figure out commercial insurance? So we'll dive through. So again, this is myself here. So I own a business called Cornerstone, and in that we have Cornerstone Licensing Services and Integrity First Insurance. So as I mentioned, I'm a PNC agent in all 50 states, and whenever I have to say that stuff, you have to put your agency license, your producer license on there. Says the great state of California. So that's who I am and what I do. We'll talk through all these different elements on here. What is insurance? What are the different coverage types? How it affects price, which there's some really important tips there that I can give you. What are some common compliance triggers? So this regulatory piece is an important one. How do you pick that right partner, the broker, the agent? What does that mean? And then how did we decide as Cornerstone on what we do?
Okay.
So Insurance 101. So again, as I mentioned, it's like a tool. So the insured, so in the top corner, you can see that's this group of people. That's you and me and all of us. Yep. You might hear it said it's an insured. You might say them as the policy holders, any of those types of terms. That's us. That's you, me, all of us. And you work with brokers or agents, and I'll define what those mean in a little bit. But those folks that sometimes are called producers are the people that are the interaction between you as an individual or you as a business owner and what are called carriers. So Hartford and Nationwide and Geico, right? You hear all of those.
Geico, Lloyd's or whatever. Lloyd's is
Lloyd's of London. Yeah, it's another great one. So those people have these guys and gals called underwriters, and they're really a bunch of brilliant actuaries, and they're working on all these different types of risks. Mm-hmm. And so it's everything from automotive to house to health to business, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. And those underwriters do all that work within a carrier and determine how risky you are. And then they pool that risk. So all that piggy bank down there, that's all of our money that flows through all those things. Okay. And we pool that risk together. And again, as I mentioned, insurance doesn't prevent the loss, but it mitigates the impact of a loss. Mm-hmm. And again, another key player is those regulators. You're going to hear about them a lot because the regulators really dictate a lot of this stuff because, frankly, the insurance as an industry has gotten a lot of black eyes over the years because people will come in and they'll mess with people's minds around, oh, you've got to do this, otherwise, your mom's going to die, or all these kind of crazy things, right? And so it's one of the most heavily regulated industries in the world. As I mentioned before, every state has their own specific regulations, and if you ever have problems with either your broker, your agent, your carrier, any of those things, you can report them to the state, and the state takes it very, very seriously. And people like me, if I did the wrong thing, I could lose my license, and you could lose it for a time, you could be suspended, or you could lose it altogether and could never practice insurance sales or insurance producing again.
The carrier takes all the money from all the people like us who have businesses, and then hopefully only X number of us have an issue and the rest of us don't. And that's how they...
That's exactly the way to think about it. So I use the example of the boat that we found out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, mm-hmm, right? There were probably 5,000 to 10,000 boats off the coast of Miami on that one day. Okay. All of those folks went out, had a great time, maybe had some drinks, enjoyed the beautiful water off of Miami, and got back home safe. But every single one of them had to pay into the pool, right? Every one of them had to have that boating insurance. Oh, but that one boat that we found out in the middle of nowhere, matter of fact, it was so torn up that we actually had to sink the boat because it was a risk to navigation. Yeah, it was so far out and so broken up by the time we got there. We brought the people on board. We saved the people, but the boat had to get... we had to sink the boat.
How did you sink it? I just
That's actually one of the more fun jobs. Like, we would literally light it on fire. We'd actually punch a bunch of holes into it and then light it on fire and make sure it sunk down.
Okay, so sorry. I was just sorry.
Fill it with gasoline, and then we'd literally shoot flares at it from a distance to make sure we didn't blow up either. And that's one of the more fun jobs in the Coast Guard.
Got you.
Yeah, but the carrier had to pay those people back, right? Because they had a boat that was out there. Now, did they make some knucklehead moves by going out there and do that stuff? Yes, but that's part of your policy, and we'll talk about policy in a little bit. Okay. But basically the carrier had to pay for that, and it's obviously not coming out of the carrier's money. It's coming out of all of the policyholders' money that didn't have their boat sink, right? Yep. So that 5,000 to 10,000 people off the coast of Miami that nothing went wrong, they each put in a couple bucks to pay for the knucklehead's boat. And that's part of the insurance world.
All right. Got it. That makes sense.
Okay, so let's talk through some common insurance terms. I know this is a little bit in the weeds, but I think it's important. So underwriting is how the insured assess the risk, right? So how the carriers, how the underwriters, you'll hear underwriters as a title, how how do they assess the risk? And they'll look through a bunch of different things, but these are the most common things that you're going to hear about. So deductible, right? If you're a business where you keep a lot of cash on hand, you can raise up your deductible, and that's the what you can actually pay off before you have a claim. So an example of that is, let's say you hire a lot of, I'll keep using the word knucklehead, but you hire employees where sometimes they pocket some stuff. Yep. Well, you can actually have crime insurance, right? And from loss and theft and that kind of thing. If you have a very small deductible, that means that the insurance carrier has to pay a lot more. So if you don't have a lot of cash and you can't have a very big deductible, then your insurance premium will go up. The cost for your insurance will go up because your deductible is not very high. Okay. But if you got a lot of cash on hand, maybe you can afford a higher deductible, and that means that the plan doesn't kick in until after you pay that off. Okay. Right? And so higher deductible means lower premium and more savings for you. And our healthcare works the same way. For the exactly right. Okay. Exactly right. Yep. And that's the thing. We're talking a lot about commercial insurance. Yeah. We're talking, again, a lot of business owners. But all those same things are very common across these. Okay. Another thing you might hear is an endorsement. So in a typical standard policy, an endorsement is an addendum or an attachment to it. So if you you put it up a warehouse and it's like, oh, it's touching a floodplain. Well, a lot of people get concerned about it. And the reason why is, well, now you need a flooding endorsement, which means your premium or how much you're going to pay for your insurance each month is going to go up. So that's what an endorsement is. It's an attachment to it. Exclusion is the other side of it. So it doesn't cover something. So something that's very common you'll see if you read, and most people don't, but if you the document you sign when you rent a car from Avis, let's say, they'll have something in the small writing that says off-road use is excluded from your insurance policy. Right. So if you took that car off-roading, that's not covered. Any damage to that vehicle, you're going to have to pay because it's excluded. Got it. Next, the limit, obviously the maximum amount of insurance will pay. So you could say, yeah, I want to be covered for everything. Well, the higher amount that you cover is the more premium you're going to have to pay as well. Okay. And so as you can imagine, if you say, hey, I want to protect everything that's in my building. Well, the limit can be for the replacement value, which is either buying a new, or it can be just the value of the current mount, right? So as you start, the desks and chairs and stuff, as you over time will reduce the amount that you're paying for those, right? You're amortizing and all the different pieces of those property. Well, you can replace either that or you can say, no, I want brand new, right? So you're increasing the limit so your premium goes up. Got it. And all that results in, I've said it over and over again, but the premium, that's the actual cost of your cover. That's what we call it. So can be upfront, can be monthly, can be financed. So a premium, most people experience it with car insurance or the health insurance, and you're paying a certain amount each month. Well, what that means is they're actually financing your insurance over that period of time. Oftentimes, when you're talking about commercial insurance, it'll be an upfront cost. Okay. So they'll say, hey, we want to get all of your insurance premium up front. It's going to be a huge block of money. Car insurance or the health insurance, and you're paying a certain amount each month. Well, what that means is they're actually financing your insurance over that period of time. Oftentimes, when you're talking about commercial insurance, it'll be an upfront cost. Okay. So they'll say, hey, we want to get all of your insurance premium up front. It's going to be a huge block of money. So some companies will offer financing for that insurance, especially in some of the more expensive industries. So we do a lot of work with financial services. Nice. Those premiums are often 6 figures and sometimes even 7 figures that you're paying out. And so a lot of people will ask to be financing those, which means you put 25% down and the remaining 75% you'll pay off throughout the year. Okay. Got it. So these have to do with your policy. So a bind request, you might hear that. It seems like you're in a bind. Binder, yeah. What that actually means is that your agent has locked in your policy. So when you meet with your agent and you talk to them and say, oh, I think I want this, and they tell you, okay, here's how much it pays, all those different things, the agent can actually bind that coverage and provide you a quick start to that coverage. Okay. As you can imagine, agents will have a limit to how much they can bind. If it's a massive policy, they probably can't bind it right away. If it's a smaller one that they deal with all the time, and it's a normal industry that they work with all the time, they'll go, yeah, bind, we'll start this thing right away. Then you'll get the actual insurance policy. So yes, you're started on your insurance, but your insurance policy with all the different details, oftentimes that'll take anywhere from 15 to 30 days for the carrier to kind of finish all the documents, get it to your agent, and then your agent gets it to you. So the binding actually provides you the opportunity to get it a little bit faster.
Oh, good.
And then that final piece is that certificate of insurance. It's kind of a one-pager that your carrier will give to you. And oftentimes, if you're working with a new client or a new customer and they're like, oh, are you insured? What they're really asking for is, give me a certificate of insurance. And that'll be provided by your carrier that says, Company X has coverage for these limits in these categories. And that's what a certificate of insurance is.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. All right, now these are the hard parts. This is the bad stuff, right? So when something bad happens, that's called the event, right? It's the event is not what you're insured for. So if you have hurricane insurance, you're not actually insuring the event of a hurricane. You're insuring that next line down, which is the loss. So the loss is the amount that you have covered, whether it's physical, financial, it could be even like physical health, right? Like how much coverage you have and how much loss there was. If you have a loss, then what you do is you make a claim. And again, I know this is very basic, but some people, I know this is 101 stuff, right? But it's important for you to understand it. Yeah. Is that you make a claim. That is a formal request by a policyholder, right? A business owner will make a formal request to, you can either do to your agent, to the carrier. Most often it's to your agent. You'll say, hey, I had a loss, right? This event happened. It resulted in this loss. I would like to make a claim for that. And you're going to say, here's how much I want because this, and this happened. Well, unfortunately, the carrier doesn't just take your word for it, right? Then there's an investigation. And that person is an adjuster. The adjuster is the person that does that investigation. And they'll look around and what they'll start with is they'll look through your policy, see what you're actually covered for. Then they'll go and gather evidence of loss. They'll take photos. They might take statements. And it all depends on what type of insurance it is, right? They'll do all sorts of different due diligence to make sure it's legit. And then they recommend either a settlement of the claim, which means they pay it, or a denial, or they could offer kind of a middle ground, which is, hey, this area we think is, this area isn't. And an example of that is like, let's say you owned a large building and there was a fire in part of the building. Well, they would evaluate, okay, the fire happened over here, and then the firefighters had to come in and they sprayed water on it, but the water also got on my inventory over here. And to get in, they had to use, the fireman axes to break down doors, so those doors. And then there's the other part of your business over here that didn't seem to be touched. And you might say, well, with all the smoke over there, the smell is in my other side of my my business. I want that covered because I'm not getting sales right now through that business. So a continuation of business insurance, I should get money for that too. The insurance adjuster is going to come in and try to make that decision. And just so you know, an important part of that is your agent can be really helpful in that because they'll help you understand, like, what are those things that adjuster's looking for and that kind of thing. So they'll work with you to help you on that.
Cool. And is it you only get covered for a loss if you ask for it, I'm assuming? Like you could just not ask for it else, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. And matter of fact, one of the things the agent will help you with is understanding when you should make a claim and when you shouldn't make a claim. I'll speak from personal experience. I'm a business owner, right? There are times, so I have what's called E&O insurance, and we'll talk about E&O insurance, which is errors and omissions, right? So there are times when my team, doesn't happen very often, literally like once every couple of years, but they will make a mistake, and then one of our clients will say, hey, we want you to pay for that mistake, and there might be a debate about it. There are times when you go, oh, that's a tiny mistake. It'll cost $500. I'm just going to pay for it as the business owner, and I'm going to take care of it myself out of my own pocket, right? It's a business expense. I'm just going to pay for this thing. But if it's $5 million that customer's wanting, well, now I have to tell my insurance agents about it. I'm going to figure all that stuff out. You don't want to make a claim unless there's a significant either financial hardship that you'll experience because of it. Because as soon as you make that claim, your carrier will now know that you have, you're making requests of them, right? When in a perfect world, like, Allstate or Geico or any of those things, right? It's just like if you're a good driver and you never ask for it,
right.
Over the years, you'll get much less increase than you will if you're, my teenage son who likes to, get claims all the time. Put against it now. But if that's the type of profile you have, your premiums are going to go up and up and up and up every year. And then even if you try to switch to a new carrier, you're going to have to report what you made of claims of your last carrier. And so they're going to look at you as a higher risk because you had, 13 claims every year or whatever. One of the industries that we serve is the collections or the ARM industry. In collections, people make claims against or sue collections agencies all the time. It's
really?
a very common tactic, right? I don't want to pay the money that I owe. I'm going to sue the collections agency for X, Y, and Z. So we help with those collections agencies, and you can imagine they are all the time deciding, hey, do I pay this person, $2,000 and then they go away happy, or is this one where I need to make the claim because they're going to be asking for $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000? So I need to bring the insurance agency to come in to help me pay this thing off.
Got it.
So, on next, so the types of insurance, we talk a lot about this, but these are literally different buckets of licensing that each of your brokers or your agents, and again, we'll talk about what the difference is between a broker and agent in a minute, but what they will cover. So there's auto, home, health, and business. The personal side is there's a personal auto and personal home and personal health insurance, right? So you'll do that stuff as a person, direct with a lot of different companies. But we'll also talk a lot about commercial. So on the business side, what are those business areas? And that's what we'll do a deeper dive in, is like what business pieces are. And you can see that commercial kind of bleeds into health as well, because there's healthcare that it will be covered as well on the business side. And so we'll talk a little bit about the difference of those. This is for commercial insurance. So we'll dive in deep. These are kind of 5 kind of major buckets, if you will, of insurance. And we'll talk in depth about each of these. But there's that professional liability, the errors and omissions, cyber, employment, specialty profession like lawyers. They actually have their own category because lawyers get sued so often and they love to sue each other. I don't want to be a lawyer ever. It's crazy, but they're literally insurance categories just for those professionals. And then a miscellaneous group, which is like these umbrella and excess. So errors and omissions. This is accidental, non-intentional, non-criminal methods of making mistakes, and a business gets sued for making a mistake. Okay, so this is most common in the professional businesses. As I mentioned, we do a lot of financial services, so money lenders, money transmitters, people that are sending money back and forth. I'll use that as an example. Zelle. Zelle is a pretty large company. Most people have heard of Zelle. Yeah. They're not a client of ours, so I can talk freely about them. Let's say somebody at Zelle that's working at Zelle accidentally takes money out of somebody's account and sends it to somebody else, not intentionally, and just accidentally does that. Well, the person that had their money taken out of their account can sue Zelle and say, hey, you owe me that money because you took it out of my account. And Zelle's going, oh, I transferred, let's call it $200,000. I took $200,000 and sent it to person X. And that other person is just taking it and running off with it, right? And they said, hey, no, you transferred to my account. I'm not giving it back. Well, Zelle is the one that will be responsible for getting that $200,000 back to the person that they accidentally took it out of. Right. And again, the person was not criminally doing it. They just did it on accident. Well, that is covered under errors and omissions. So business owners like Matt, you and I, and other people who watch this podcast, we're getting covered for the mistakes that our people make. And hopefully your company doesn't have a lot of mistakes they make, but I'm guessing if you operate a business and you have people that you have employed under you, they're going to make mistakes. And so there's a lot of those things. Covers legal, covers the settlement costs, covers all those different elements. Yep. That's
Yeah, we definitely, we do financial advisory, so in the off chance we give some really bad advice, we've had it from the beginning. Just because I was never willing to take the risk. Yeah, and you can see like the average lawsuit costs $180,000. Oh my god! And that's just defense alone can cost you $100,000. I mean, it's incredible. So, all right, data and cyber. This is another huge one. Oh my gosh, yes. Data and cyber. It's incredible, right? It was really interesting because we've seen this evolution. So 10 years ago, cyber liability insurance was dirt cheap. Didn't really, no one really knew much about it. And it was just kind of like the very conservative people just kind of got a little cyber insurance. It's now evolved to actually a very large element of insurance.
Very expensive compared to what it used to be. It's still not as much as E&O insurance, which is the craziest of crazy. But it's quite expensive because of the number of cyber attacks that are happening in the U.S., but also all around the world, right? And so to cover like financial protection, so if money is stolen or anything like that, data breach is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you guys have seen it. Matt, I'm sure you have gotten an email from somebody saying, hey, there was a data breach.
I've been getting some good ones and some 50 times lately too,
Yeah. And so what happens is if there's a data breach, someone steals your data and then they start using it, right? I, as a consumer, you, Matt, as a consumer, you can sue the company for losing your data and it being used against you, right? Like someone stole the data, opened an account and took $500,000 out of that account. Well, guess what? If you can show a line back to, again, I'm not saying Zelle would ever do this, but I'll keep using Zelle as my example. If you can show the line back to Zelle, well, then Zelle will have to cover that cost, right? And the reality is the insurance carrier would have to cover that cost for Zelle, right?
So we talked, so Ian, just real quick on an E&O, like anybody that's giving advice or anybody whose mistake might cost a client something should probably have E&O, right?
100%. Absolutely.
Okay, and then on data, how do I know if I need data or cyber? Like, is your average, plumber or average e-commerce business, do they need it?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. So I always kind of recommend two things, and I'll caveat this first, and I'll say it over and over again, but every business is different. Yeah. So you definitely need to talk to an agent, and so this is very general advice. The two things that I recommend is one, how much data do you have internally kept either on your website or on your software platform? If the amount of data is extremely small, like you use an example of a plumber. A plumber has a website that doesn't have anyone's data on it. All it has is like it's like an advertisement type of website, right? Just call this number. Very low risk and very low cost if a cyber criminal suddenly had your account, right?
Okay. Yep.
I would say you have very little need for major cyber insurance. You might want to have a little bit because what can happen is people can steal your name and start doing those things. And then you can kind of sue them for doing all that kind of stuff and they can help with that. So you might want a little bit, but if you're not carrying a bunch of data, that is kind of question I always ask, number one. And if you're not carrying a lot of data, probably don't. And if you do, you need very little of it. The second question you need to ask is, am I in a regulated industry, right? And that is another piece where I will tell you, the plumbers of California, there's not some major regulatory body that's saying, oh, you need to have this cyber liability insurance. But if you're in financial services, right, I guarantee you that the regulatory body is going to require you to maintain a certain amount of cyber liability insurance, and usually minimums are around $1 million of insurance. Now, that's not what you're paying. That's what you're covered for, right? So you're getting at least $1 million worth of insurance, and states now are starting to raise it up to $5 million just for, even if you just open a shop and you haven't even done business yet, but you're in financial services, oftentimes there will be minimum required cyber liability insurance that you're required to have as part of the industry you're in.
How much data do you have? How expensive is it to fix the problem? And then are you regulated? So like I would imagine an e-commerce business will have Shopify, and if someone blows up their site, it's very expensive to fix it. And they also have data on 100,000 people. So you should probably have it then, right? I guess?
That's correct. Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely you should. And what some people are trying to do to minimize the impact is you'll see them like using Stripe or other types of basically payables, right? So that's a way of being PCI compliant where you're like, I don't have any credit card data. All of it interacts with Stripe or some other type of payment processor. And I'm going to keep that kind of separate from my entity. And really the way that the reason why those types of businesses are so powerful and they work so well is it splits apart the liability or the risk that e-commerce business is holding underneath them. So they might have to have some, maybe you have $100,000 or $200,000 of coverage, right? Because you'll have to fix things if you get like into your website and all that kind of stuff. But if you held everyone's credit card and payment information and all the stuff that's going through the payment processor, if you held that within your company, well, man, all of a sudden you now need to have millions of dollars of insurance.
Do not take credit card numbers on note paper in your office. Like, put it into the Stripe thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
It's a great way. Payment processors are really, really good at sniffing out crime, at sniffing out, anything that's going wrong with that data, and they have extremely strong methods to protect all of that data. And if you can keep that bucket split off from you, then your insurance will go way, way, way down. And that'll be part of what will happen with the agent. The agent will start asking you those types of questions like, how do you do credit cards? And if you say, and I kid you not, I've had customers that say this, they'll say, oh, well, the people just, they email me their credit card number, and then I have their credit card number and I'll do all those other things. And I'm going, whoa, like, do you know the risk you're putting yourself under? Because if somebody breaks into your email system and steals that, or one of your employees gets angry, or one of your employees gets on hard financial times and realizes I can just use this customer data, well, all of a sudden you're going to get sued and you're going to spend a ton of money to try to fix this, and your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
Wow. I am so lucky because when we obviously take credit cards for our retainers or whatever, and there's like an automation in this document agreement software that it puts it into Stripe without me knowing what the number is. But like, I didn't do that on purpose. It's just because it was easy.
Yes.
Fuck, man.
Well, this is the core reason why. It's yes, there's a business case for it, right? Because they're good at doing those things. But the reality is this is the major reason why, is because it retains, or it basically buckets out your liability. It splits you out from that liability.
Got it.
Claims of discrimination, harassment, wrongful termination, right? Any of those EPLIs. Frequently, there are a lot of states that require you to get EPLI insurance, regardless of what industry you're in. So, and again, it's just because, and if you've owned a business for any length of time, Matt, I'm sure you've dealt with some of this stuff. I know I have in my career. People will get fired because they were a terrible employee, but they'll say, oh, no, it was because of this, that, and the other. And so that's a big deal. You've got to have EPLI insurance. D&O, directors and officers insurance, it protects the officers of the company from having any personal liability around governance. So if they say, oh, we would like to move into some new countries, and we're going to go do business in South America, and Venezuela seems like a great country. Oh, we didn't realize that there's government restrictions about doing business in Venezuela. Oh no, now we're being sued. Well, you can actually get sued at the personal level. So D&O insurance protects the personal liability of directors and officers of the company. Yep. And then the final piece is, again, this one's pretty obvious, but crime, right? So that's internal theft, embezzlement, forgery, fraud, all those different pieces. So. And again, it's sad, but the reality is this stuff happens every day, all across the country, all across the world.
And so for your typical business owner, they should have the EPLI one, just in case they fire someone slightly incorrectly or whatever. And then, do most of us need D&O?
It's a great question. So on this list here, I would say EPLI is number 1, crime and dishonesty is number 2, and D&O is 3. But as the size and scale of your company grows, D&O insurance becomes more and more and more important. So for instance, Cornerstone, we have D&O insurance. Yeah. We've been around for a long time. We have thousands of clients. At this point, I want to protect the directors in my company from getting people to come after them for the decisions that they're making. So what I recommend is, if you're a sole proprietor, you're running the plumbing business, and you've got 3 employees, you don't need D&O, and you probably don't need D&O insurance, right? It's just that if someone's going to sue you, they're going to take the business, and that's your big part of your net worth anyway. As soon as you start adding more and more directors, like a director of finance, a director of operations, and you start adding kind of that next layer of governance, typically that's when you're going to start going, I want to protect these people. They're making decisions every day. E&O, I think about as kind of lower level, like the day-to-day people are making decisions. D&O is kind of that next layer up. how they're making decisions, you want to protect them at that level too.
So it's not necessarily about you as the owner being covered?
I always think about my directors because it protects them, and I know the decisions that I'm making and I can defend them. Sometimes at the director level, they might make decisions that are different than the one that I would make as the owner of the company. And I want to make sure that our company is protected from some of the decisions they're making. And obviously at the officer level, that's important too.
And a director can be sued personally for a business decision?
That's right. It's kind of crazy, but if you can prove that this director made a decision that was unlawful or inappropriate or whatever, then it can kind of flow up and get to them personally.
Wow.
And that's what D&O protects.
I thought D&O was for board directors, not like middle management directors. Because I knew the board is responsible for guiding the company, and then so if they fire someone or whatever, like they can obviously be sued, and that made sense. But I did not know it was for middle managers.
It's all dependent on your policy. So you can define your policy to be as limited in scope, and just say, and literally I've had some board members that are like, I personally want D&O insurance for me, right?
Yeah.
So you can limit the scope of it, or you can expand the scope down into the corporate ladder as far as you want as well to protect different people at different layers.
Okay.
General liability, again, you're going to need to have it, right? It covers third-party injuries, so slip, trips, and falls, all those types of things. You're going to need to have it. Property insurance, right? So where people often, so the crime covers internal theft, right? That criminal insurance. The property insurance is what covers an outsider stealing from your company. Right, so that's why you need that from fire, natural disasters. Obviously, that's really important. Workers' comp, again, something that the regulators will require that you cover injuries, illnesses, all those different pieces. It's mandatory again in most states. They're going to require that you have it. And so those, again, these are those things. Fortunately, these things are relatively inexpensive for a smaller company, and if you don't have a large, like a warehouse or a manufacturing facility, these will be very small for you. Now, as you add a manufacturing, right, or if you have a bunch of employees doing metal work or they're in a foundry or something, these get much, much higher. But again, as you grow your company, then those will be.
Let's say you're a remote company and you don't have like an office and your staff are remote and there isn't like a warehouse, you have a third party like 3PL or what have you, do you need general?
Yeah, I would still say first you definitely need workers' comp.
Okay.
So workers' comp is categorized by your job type, and sure enough they have a remote office worker job type in your workers' comp. Every state does. It's much lower, right? The cost is much lower, but you still have to have it because they can, employees can have all sorts of injuries happen on the job, right? Repeated injuries or standing at a standing desk, right? All sorts of different things. Property insurance is less important if you don't have those physical assets, right? You still might want to take a look at it, talk with your agent, make sure there are some theft issues, right? If you have a home office, right? I'm in my home office right now. If someone breaks in and steals stuff out of my home office, and you've claimed this as kind of an office space, you can actually sometimes use property insurance for that theft coming out of there.
Oh,
so again, different pieces there. Yep. And then general liability, again, is the third-party injuries. So you're going to have to talk through those pieces. That's important. But that last piece on there, those legal claims, that's the important part for you. So again, this is smaller cost. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So is this the one where, like, if you sell like a product, baby carrier, let's say, I had a client that did that, and their insurance was relatively high because it was baby equipment. Is this general that they have then?
That's right. That's right. And they'll actually will be subcategories. So if you're a manufacturer, make sure your agent knows about that because that's exactly what they're doing. Is they're going, okay, what are the products you're selling? And then, like you said, baby carriers. Oh, so if it's a stroller and a wheel breaks and the baby falls out and gets a brain injury, God forbid, and they're impacted for the whole of their life, you're going to be sued for millions of dollars. That's why their insurance is so crazy high, right? Versus if you're, selling Post-it notes or whatever, right? You're not going to, there's much less risk there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we mentioned this attorney, so I'll just put it on there, but, specialty coverages, they have those as well. So let's go to what affects insurance price. So premiums, right? That's what that piece is. So the industry will impact it. How much money you're making makes a lot of big difference. So as you grow bigger, you're going to have to pay more. Your claims history, I mentioned this before. So making the decision to make the claim or not make the claim, it's a big deal, right? How much do you want to be excluded, and how much do you want to be included in your policy? Again, it's pretty common sense, but if I have $1 billion policy where I'm covering every possibility that could ever happen, and I'm in a very risky industry, my insurance premiums are going to be huge. If you're like you said, remote business, you have no physical assets, you're not doing, no one's selling anything that's really risky, your insurance should be far, far smaller. But again, that's where an agent can come in and be your advocate and help you understand, okay, here are the different pieces of your risk profile. Here's the things you should cover. Here's the things you shouldn't. And then they can even make strategic recommendations to you about, hey, you know how you're thinking about going down that line of business? You might actually want to consider this line instead of that line.
Interesting.
And that will literally can make business decisions for you. And we'll talk a little bit later about what the agency broker relationship is like. But those are important. And then strategic adjustments can improve cost efficiency. So if you find someone that's a really good insurance agent, what they should be doing with you is meeting with you, talking about the strategy of your business, and giving you recommendations on how to save money. So that's this long-term relationship built with that provider.
And you're talking about that at some point, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we'll get to that
awesome.
soon. Okay. So compliance triggers. I just want to talk about this super quick. Sure. It's only a single slide, but sometimes what will happen is you'll get a client, and this, again, I'm in financial services, so this happens fairly common, is they'll ask as they're doing their vendor reviews, their vendor audits, hey, Jeff, you guys at Cornerstone, what insurance do you guys have? Tell me about your coverage limits, because I'm giving you a lot of data. So on the Cornerstone side, that we do insurance and then we do licensing. On the licensing side, as you can imagine, we receive a lot of important information about our clients. Everything from their driver's licenses to their conditions of their businesses, all those different things. So there's a pretty high risk, data risk in that. So they want large limits. So we have big, multi-million dollar limits on our plans to make sure, because if something breaks or something doesn't go right, the client is totally covered by our insurance agency. So they're asking for that. State requirements are important too. So often different industries, they'll require you to maintain certain amounts of insurance, like we talked about before.
Yep.
Vendor agreements, like we talked about, and regulatory, right? So all those different things.
The ones I feel like I see the most are, like, let's say if you want to sell to Costco, and Costco's like, yeah, we'd love to take your product, but you have to show us that you have insurance that would cover such and such, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I used to work for GE a decade plus ago, and I was on the buyer side. So that was my very first job after the Coast Guard. I was a buyer for GE. Cool. And we had the worst terms in the world. Like, we would pay people forever later and all those different things. But one of the things we did is we required super high amounts of insurance by our vendors, because we wanted to always be able to say, hey, that was an issue, let's bounce it back to the vendor to pay for it.
I see.
And so if you're working with bigger companies, the Walmarts, the GEs, the Costcos of the world, they're going to require much higher coverage limits for your insurance. So just be ready for that. And also, like we mentioned, or if you're in industries that the states require lots of insurance. So there's some industries that require very little and some that require a whole lot. So just know it going in. Be ready for it.
Got it.
Okay. So how do you choose the right insurance partner? This is super important. So it's really important that they understand your industry, business size, service, and risk exposure. So that's that first bullet there.
Just real quick, when you say insurance partner, this is like the broker or the agent that you're going to be working with to craft your policies and stuff?
Exactly right.
Okay,
exactly
great.
right.
Okay,
Yep. And I should have put that slide up earlier. We'll get to that in a second about those different pieces, but we'll talk about it in a second. So the partner that you have, the broker or the agent, it's really nice if they understand your industry. So you'll hear quite a few insurance agencies, their go-to-market strategy is, we are the general liability insurance pros for the pen manufacturing industry, right? It's very common for the insurance people to do that and say, hey, I understand all the risks that are inherent in pens. So I am the right guy to hire to support your company in your pen manufacturing. That is important. It is not the only thing that's important, but it is a piece that's important. the more complex your business, the better it is to have somebody that understands it. So I mentioned we do a lot of financial services. Financial service insurance coverage is super hard to do. I mentioned one of the subsets of financial services is the AIM, or this collections business, right? Their industry. Collections is an incredibly complicated industry to insure because you get sued all the time. You have collectors that come in and out of the business all the time that you have to get training. There's all these compliance and regulatory things. Different states have very, very different, like red states and blue states have very different views of debt collection. And so the rules and regulations are very different across the different states. All the more reason for them to get sued, right? So you need to have someone that understands that industry. It's really important. It's really valuable if it's in a complex industry. If you're in a very basic, if you're doing lawn mowing or plumbing or those types of things, yeah, there's some value that you'll get out of somebody that has some specialty understanding. But if it's not an insanely complex industry, then you can go with a more broad set of folks.
Okay.
Next up, how to choose it. Review client contracts, state requirements, data sensitivity. So you want to make sure that your partner understands how to do those and can do the due diligence necessary to help you with that. So this is my comment around your buddy, right? Everybody's got a buddy that sells insurance, right? And I've known a million of them, and they're like, hey, like I understand, Miami. I mentioned Miami before. I understand Miami. It's really good. It's like, well, that's nice. Like, but what do you understand about the requirements of my industry in our state? What do you understand about our clients? Like, you need to understand those pieces. So you got to really do that. That's really important.
Here's the question, though, right? And which is that I, as a business owner, might not understand the regulations either. So how do I really know if this agent, broker guy, gal, knows what they're talking about? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you understand it. I don't know that I do. And so then this guy goes, well, there's required blah, 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 blah. And well, how do I know that that person knows what they're doing?
So there's two ways that I recommend it. The first is you either got to do the diligence yourself, right? Okay. Between ChatGPT and Complexity and all the tools that are out there now, that will help you actually understand some of those pieces. And then when you're interviewing agents, they can ask that. And the second piece is you got to shop around a bit. You got to talk to 2 or 3 or 4 folks and examine them across each other, right? Like and review and compare notes across a series of different agents.
That makes sense.
Your buddy that sells insurance will never want you to do that, right?
Right.
They'll be like, no, I'll hook you up. I got you. It's like, nah, let me talk to 3 or 4. And then all of a sudden, like, this person seems really competent and this person's saying those prices are out of whack. And you just start comparing and contrasting. And that will really help you get pretty far along. Okay.
And you know what? I had someone on who talked about picking agencies, and they said every time you got to talk to between 3 and 5 different agencies. And one thing I've done recently is I've recorded a transcript with this and this agency, and I put them all into ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT, and I used the O3 version, and I said, like, can you rank them against each other across a couple metrics, and it'll help me pick out which one seems to know the most or whatever.
I love it. That's brilliant. I think that's really, really smart way to do it. It takes a little bit of work up front, but it'll save you literally tens of thousands of dollars over the life of your company.
That makes so much sense. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Next one, an agent who can work with the whole market and multiple carriers. So we're going to talk about captive agents. So I'm going to hold that bullet for a second because I've got a slide that directly addresses that.
Okay.
Brokers with experience with their business model matter too. So like there's a lot of really hungry young insurance agents out there. Mm-hmm. My sister-in-law did it, and she was literally like 22 years old, sweetheart, super cute, and like won all these clients. And then she was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Right? And so she won them over by being a sweetheart and being amazing. But like experience really does have some value. Now, experience with a business model is really valuable, but just experience in general. Mm-hmm. Because they'll know what you're looking for. They'll understand how to give you good strategies. And then most importantly, frankly, is when something goes wrong and you have to make a claim, they're going to help hand walk you through that process, right? Like hold your hand as you're going through that process.
Got it.
And that's going to be really critical. Okay. Next up, compare coverage options transparently, including limits, exclusion, pricing. One of the harder things if you're working with a captive agent, we'll talk about what that means in 1 second, is they won't want to give you a comparison. They won't let you comparison shop. And it's really hard to compare policies because they have all sorts of different levers. There's going to be exclusions, and some like literally someone can say, hey, I can save you 20% off your current premiums. And you'll be like, wow, that's saving me, $8,000 a year in wasted money because I never use my insurance policies anyway. That's awesome. Well, it turns out he takes you down to such bare bones that if anything actually happened, you wouldn't actually be covered for anything.
Right.
So you really have to understand those different pieces, and you need to find a broker or an agent that's going to sit you down and go, okay, here's the price, but here's what's under the price. Here's where things are excluded and what are not excluded.
And this is where, for people that aren't insurance people, you have to interview the 3 to 5 folks.
That's
because
right.
there's just no way you can know, right?
Yep.
Or just find a way to get you on a podcast with them. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And then ongoing support, right? So your business is going to, as your business grows, one of the blessings of it growing is hopefully you're making more money and things are growing, everything's going well. The downsides is that almost inevitably your insurance is going to go up.
Yeah.
You have more employees to cover. You're going to do more things, so the complexity is going to grow, so that is going to increase cost.
Yeah.
You're going to have more revenues. All of those different things will add to the cost. So you need to make sure that you're keeping your agent apprised of how you're growing. And if you're growing very quickly, you might want to talk to your agent every quarter, right? If you're a steady Eddie, maybe once a year is fine. But if you're growing pretty quickly, or you're adding new verticals, you're adding new products, any of those types of things, you want to talk to your agent more often. So a captive agent versus an independent agent. A captive agent is employed by the carrier. So there's many of these types of companies that are out there, like the Geicos, right, of this world, or State Farm, right? Like Jake from State Farm. Jake works for State Farm. His job, his W-2 paycheck comes from State Farm.
Okay.
He is an agent that works for them and tries to sell you what you want, right? So there's fewer options, but they usually will know everything that State Farm offers very, very clearly. I have a buddy of mine that works for State Farm, and he's really good at what he does, and he knows everything that they do, and he's limited because he can only offer State Farm, but he knows everything that they can offer, versus an independent agent. So Cornerstone, we are an independent agent. So we're not employed by any one carrier. We get what's called appointed with different carriers, which means they validate that we're legitimate, that we're licensed, that we are good at what we do. We've been doing it for a long time, and we get appointed. So we're appointed with 14 different carriers around the country, all of the big ones, right? Lloyd's and Travelers and all the big companies that you could think of. And then what we do is we bring a client in and we shop the market on behalf of the client.
Okay.
So a good independent agent will help shop for you. So as you're looking at, those 3 or 4 agents and you're interviewing them, you can figure out which one, you like. And the really good independent agents are not presenting you with, here's what I recommend you do. What they're doing is they're saying, here are 3 or 4 options of what you could do, from, the Cadillac coverage, super expensive, but anything could happen and you are covered, to here's the bare bones, like, the state required minimums, like the absolute bottom of the barrel coverage, but it's super cheap, right? So you have to make kind of decisions, and they'll kind of present those things and really show you, here are the trade-offs of these different carriers. Here's the good parts and the bad parts. And if something happens, if they're an independent agent that's been around for a while, they'll say, hey, when something goes wrong, this one is great, this one stinks.
Yes.
Yeah. So I use the example all the time of USAA versus Geico. So I was in the military, so I had USAA for years. USAA was awesome. When my wife got into a little accident, it was, she rear-ended somebody. They did everything. They took care of everything. It was amazing.
Cool.
And I loved them, and I stayed with them for a long time. USAA kept getting more and more expensive, and their service levels went down and down and down. So I eventually flopped my, again, just auto insurance, but my auto coverage to Geico, because I realized, outside of my wife getting in that accident literally decades ago, or not, I should be careful. She's gonna hear this, but we don't have that needed. Yeah. So it's like nowadays, like my wife and I, we're in our 40s. We don't get into a lot of accidents, knock on wood, but Like, so we don't need to spend a lot on our insurance and our coverage. And, if something bad happens, we've got some money in the bank so we can protect ourselves a little bit better.
I see.
So that's the kind of comparison shopping that an independent agent can do for you and talk about those different things. And I haven't had a big accident on Geico, and we've been on it for a number of years. But my understanding is it's not quite as good as USAA, but it's sufficient for a guy like me, and I'd much rather save the money. But again, that's the difference you have to make.
Interesting.
I mentioned broker before. A broker is a little bit unique. A broker actually doesn't get appointed with carriers. They work only for a client, and then they ask the carriers to get a quote from them. So it's not as intimate a relationship. There's some that are out there. They're primarily in the P&C world for really unique, difficult things to cover. And they, so you're trying to insure a nuclear power plant, right? You're going to have to use a broker because there's no agent that's going to be able to do that. A broker that only focuses on nuclear power plant insurance, right? And they will literally like build a package for you and do all that kind of stuff. So typically what you're looking for is captive versus an independent agent.
So can you sell State Farm insurance?
So we cannot for two reasons. State Farm focuses primarily on personal auto and personal house. I am a P&C, so property and casualty commercial insurance. That's where my licensing is. So what you do is, and guys like us, is when we find a client, and we have many, many, many clients, right, hundreds and hundreds of clients that ask us, hey, you guys are awesome. We love you for P&C stuff. Can you just do our home auto? It's like, no, but we know really good people that do that. And we have to share with those people. And so, like my buddy that's at State Farm, like we would make introductions to the people that we found to be the best of what they do in those areas.
Got it.
So it's very unique for an insurance agency to have all of those different types of licenses. Some do, but more often than not, and sometimes you have to ask, because sometimes they aren't as clear about this stuff. Sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, we do everything. But the reality is, they have one specific license, and then they've got a buddy that does that other thing, and that buddy will be like, "Yeah, no problem, I'll take care of you," and they'll kind of share the revenue.
Do you recommend independent then, just because there's more flexibility, and they've seen?
I do, and that's why. So Cornerstone, the licensing company, existed before Cornerstone, the insurance company, did. So we created an insurance agency to help our clients that were getting licensed. To get a license, you have to have insurance, right? And so we realized we could be helpful to our clients and provide that insurance. And then that insurance agency grew up to be a big, huge thing all by itself. And we've done a really great job of it. But as we were looking at, do we want to be captive versus independent, what we realized, and we actually compete against, matter of fact, our largest competitor in one of our verticals is a captive agency. And our biggest argument to our clients is, you can go with them, and they might save you money today for this one thing, but then they're going to creep it up and creep it up and creep it up.
Yeah.
The difference is every year we look at your client and we go, let's go to the market. Let's shop the market. Let's get people to beat them up. And it's different carriers, and this is the reality of the insurance world, is different carriers will either have a tough quarter or a tough year, and all of a sudden they're really ambitious and they want to go get new clients, and so they'll offer rock bottom prices. And then the next year, a different one will go through that cycle, right? And so you are not beholden to a single carrier. Your independent agent can shop you around and say, hey, cyber liability is going crazy, but we know one that's really ambitious this year, wants to grow a bunch of their folks, and so we're going to do that.
So last question on this is, how do I know if I have an agent or a broker?
Yeah, it's a great question. First thing is you can ask.
Okay.
You can say, hey, I'd like to see your license. And anytime you ask that, they have to provide that license number. So you can literally either Google or whatever, and each of those state sites, you can look up that. And so our Cornerstone Insurance has a separate name because you have to have separate naming. So it's Integrity First Insurance. You can go to any state website in the country and go to that, like California, Integrity First Insurance, and you can go to their state license, or excuse me, their state insurance website. You can look up Jeff Brewer. You can look up Integrity First Insurance, and those numbers will be there, and they'll say they're in good standing. So you can actually Google it or look it up for every single state in the country. Be cautious not to underinsure, right? It's the biggest temptation in the world. I personally am the most penny pinching guy I know. I hate insurance because I very rarely use it. But the reality is you have to be very careful not to underinsure yourself. So I always recommend look at coverage of dollars per premium. So like, is it $1 million and it's costing you $40,000, or is it $2 million and it's costing you $60,000? Well, if it's $2 million that you need of coverage, the $60,000 policy is actually better, even though the premium is slightly higher. The dollar of coverage per premium dollar that you're spending is actually much more efficient. So think about that. Pay attention to quality of carrier. I gave you the USAA versus Geico example. USAA did an awesome job of taking care of us. That really meant a lot to my wife as she was kind of dealing with the stress of getting in an accident. That mattered to her. So pay attention to that. Understand exclusions and sublimits. Super important, right? Those exclusions will get you. So all the time we get clients that say, hey, somebody approached us and said they could save us X, Y, and Z. And I said, no problem. Just have them send us the policy. And they send us the policy, and it's got a ton of exclusions. And then we show it to them, and you compare apples to apples, and you go, oh, yeah, if you want to exclude all those things, I can give you even more savings than they gave you. But know what you're doing here, because you are leaving yourself open for a pretty big loss. Okay. And ultimately, it really comes down to know what lets you sleep well at night. So that's where I land all the time is, at what point, at what number of limit do I go, you know what, if everything went bad, that would cover us. That's what helps me sleep at night. That's what the cost of doing business is, right? Review those policies annually. Don't put anything on autopilot. Insurance agencies love it when you put things on autopilot. Don't put things on autopilot. Hey. Educate your agent on your business. Help them understand, are you growing? Are you shrinking? Shrinking is important too, because you can save money, right? Or you're going to new business lines, all those kinds of things. Help your agent know and build a real relationship with the agent. Now, I will say insurance agents are notorious for taking people out to lunch. They love doing it. Yeah. But building that relationship, it really is important because they want to understand what's going on with you and vice versa. Just be careful. Build that relationship, but never be scared to shop it around. Okay. And especially to independent brokerages, because independent brokerages just have this ability to evaluate the whole market. So always be looking on that. And then finally, ask for that side-by-side comparison in writing. I have just seen over and over again agencies that'll be like, oh, we can save you 17%, we can save you 40%, whatever. You just go, okay, please just give me the policy and give me the premium. Show it to me in writing. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they go, well, I mean, let me, blah, 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 I can do this. You're like, no. Give it to me in writing, help me review it. Then there's nothing in the insurance world that prevents you from taking that policy and that premium and bring it to your current agent and say, hey, can you beat this price?
I see.
Because they just offered this to me. And then they go, oh, well, they either go, no, we can't, or they go, oh, these are the things that are different, and here's the savings you can do. So never be scared of comparison shopping. Frankly, our best sales tool, and we've used it in Matt with a bunch of people that you and I both know together. All the time I tell these guys, it costs you $0 for me to review your policy. It costs me $0 for you to get a quote for you. It costs $0 for me to walk through the differences in what you're currently doing and this new quote. $0 for you. All it takes is a little bit of time and you sending over what you're currently doing. So it's very easy to shop if you just take a little bit of time to do that. And now with ChatGPT and all these other things, you could literally take the different options, throw them into ChatGPT or whatever your AI of choice is, have them review those different policies and say, what is the best policy? What are the things that, and whatever the best policy is, what are the weaknesses in that I should ask for a change? Got it. And then you can figure out what agent is really giving you the good policies and which one is kind of, taking some money from you.
So something I was told once, and I want to know if this is true or not, is I was talking to a couple agents. I think they were agents. They could have been brokers. I don't know. And they said, well, if you're getting that person to go find quotes for you, we can't also do that because they're going to talk to the same 14 carriers as we're going to talk to the same 14 carriers, and the carriers are going to get irritated with you, and they won't want to do this anymore. Is that true?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's good, very good question. So oftentimes, an independent agent will shop the market, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll get quotes for your particular situation. So again, you're with Company X. Mm-hmm. Company X and the profile of Company X, they're going to go to 7 different carriers and get the quotes from those different carriers. The carriers, to prevent a conflict with the other agent and you, will not give a different quote to the other agent than what they gave to you. So the question becomes, did they go through all of the different carriers out there, or did they go to their 2 or 3 carriers, right?
I see.
And so that's the question that you have to ask is, okay, what carriers did you get your quotes from for my company? Tell me which ones you got. And then you can ask the question, there's 2 strategies. You can say, why didn't you shop it to others? And they might say, well, I'm not appointed with those. I can't shop those. I'm not appointed with those. Or they might say, oh, these 3 I don't like or don't need or whatever. And then you kind of go, oh, you don't like them or don't need them or you, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You can just ask that. And then the other agent is free to shop those remaining carriers and for company X, right? And get the quotes from those companies. But again, one carrier will not provide different quotes for company X to 2 different agents because they don't want to be in there. And so it's this weird thing where if you're connected or you're signed with an agency, that agency kind of gets that first opportunity to go shop.
Yep.
And if they don't do a good enough job, then that other agent can shop the rest of the market on your behalf.
But it's not like the carriers will see your name pop up from 2 people and then be like, oh, well, this person we don't want to work with them.
So, yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
Carriers are so huge, right? Think about Travelers. Like, they are multi-billion-dollar, right?
Yeah.
An the Fortune 100 companies.
Yeah.
Carriers are massive. They don't really care about you as an individual entity. You are an underwriter's, number, right? Mm-hmm. You are a risk profile with an associated premium. Mm-hmm. That is who you are to the tens of thousands of companies. What they do care about is the agents that are sending them business.
Okay.
So if I, as my Cornerstone and Integrity First Insurance, if I am sending Travelers, we mentioned, if I'm sending Travelers, 700 of my clients and getting policies with 700 of my clients, and then I find out that Travelers is allowing a competitor a better pricing than me for my clients, I'm going to take those 700 policies and bring them over to Nationwide or bring them over to another carrier.
Okay.
So they care a lot about me as the agent and how much business they're getting from the agent. That's Integrity First Insurance, powered by Cornerstone. So again, it's a different name, and again, that's for licensing purposes. I told you it's heavily regulatory. We couldn't call it Cornerstone Licensing Insurance stuff. We had to have a separate name, so that name will be on everything, and then we offer all these different pieces, and that's kind of who we are. We have over 25 years of experience.
I really think I know how I can find it. Like, how do I find insurance? I think I know the answer to that. And how do I know how much I need? I think I know the answer to that. And how do I find a broker? And how do I know which kind? You went way longer than you were supposed to, which is fantastic. So thank you. I'm really sorry to take so much of your time. So please tell us, and go through this. What are you working on? How do we find you? Sounds like you're in all 50 states. So yeah, tell the people how they can find you.
So we've been around for 25 years. We're now at our year 27, so it's pretty exciting. So we offer full market access for P&C, right? So property and casualty, all the commercial insurance pieces that we were talking about. For your personal auto, personal health, we have partners that do that stuff, but we don't do it, so we're very transparent.
P&C would cover E&O, D&O, general, data, cyber, and...
Exactly.
So all the business ones, basically?
All the business lines we cover. That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Sorry,
absolutely. And so we pride ourselves on being very, very transparent around limits, pricing, exclusions. As I mentioned, our history back 20 years ago, 25 years ago when our company started, we started in the collections industry, which is incredibly complicated. And so we learned and kind of cut our teeth on a really complicated stuff. And so we knew we had to, horse trade a lot. We had to fight for every penny from the carriers to support our clients. And as we've expanded out into all of these different industries, so we started in financial services, and now we serve on the on the insurance side, a ton of different industries, including everything from e-com to we even support very basic stuff, electricians and everything. So we will help with all those things, and we'll really map that stuff out. We like to kind of do the good, better, best plans. We kind of show people, hey, this is a really good one we found out there. Here's a little bit better. Here's the best that we found that's out there. And good, better, best, by the way, changes based on the company's preferences. So you got to get to know it better. We do give dedicated agents. So some people do kind of a pool of folks. We give you a dedicated agent that will serve you. No one size fits all. It's really important that you pay attention to the specific company, and that's what we're really good at. Okay. So if you want our help, we have a pretty easy process. For this particular group that Matt and How Do I, the podcast here, we're using Donna Talbot, who's been a licensed agent for a long time. She's been in an insurance agency for a long time. She's excellent at what she does. Her email is dtalbot, TALBOTT, at coveredbycornerstone.com. Or you can call our number and get connected to her, 888-846-4192. That's 888-846-4192. And you can also go to our website, coveredbycornerstone.com, and fill out one of the digital intake forms. It's really, really simple. You can fill it out. We'll get back to you usually within, sometimes the same day, but usually within 24 hours, we'll get back to you to talk through kind of what your needs are, what kind of insurance you're looking to bring into your company. And that's us. That's me. Jeff, thank you for being so generous with your time. Yeah, I feel like my understanding of insurance has more than doubled, probably, I would say. I'm really sorry to take a lot of your time, but this has been amazing. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it, and look forward to continuing the conversation. Awesome.